welcome. Okay.
Just getting the whole microphone, timer. I hate this part. Can everyone hear me? Pretty well? Okay. So I was focused on that. I have no idea what Mark said about me, no other than he wants to hear what I'm going to say about presence. And I do. I have something planned about that, which is fortunate. I do want to say, in case he didn't say it or in case you didn't hear, because I think it's important that I'm not a body worker. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been working alongside your community in various capacities for about 9 years now as an educator in other ways. So I just want to say that what I'm talking about today, therapeutic presence, relates to my profession and yours, but I'm not pretending to be a member of yours. And I feel really honored because people that know me know that massage therapists are some of my favorite people. And so I just feel really honored to get to be here and share some thoughts with you today. In the time that I was Dean of Students at East West College, I helped facilitate probably a couple of dozen new student orientations. And one of the things that the Director of Education would always do is she would ask students to think about a massage that was particularly effective and memorable. And to see if they could articulate what it was that made it so, what the massage therapist did that contributed. And over time, a theme began to emerge. Of course, there were lots of different answers, but year after year, there were some themes. Students would inevitably say things like, my massage therapist was really caring, really compassionate, intuitive, empathic, grounded. They really listened. I felt really seen and safe, over and over again. And sometimes people would say, they helped me heal from an injury, or they had a particular expertise in an area that was relevant, but those answers were actually less common than you would think. Over and over again, what people were talking about was very little to do what massage therapists were doing and really about the quality of their being that they brought. They were really talking about presence. And sometimes they would use that word. They would say they were so present with me. And so this sort of confirmed something that I think on some level I already knew that's true about my field as well, which is how essential therapeutic presence is before we do anything else. And I've really come to believe that it's like therapeutic presence is sort of the ground from which therapeutic relationships and effective treatments are born. That we start there with cultivating that presence, and then those other things can flow from that place. Now, of course, presence isn't enough. We have to know some stuff. We have to develop our skills. But I think that no matter how much knowledge we acquire and how much skill we develop, those things can be really meaningless if we don't know how to simply be with another human and just attend. So this essential nature of presence has been reconfirmed over the years in talking with hundreds of massage therapists about their experiences as practitioners and as clients, which I do in my CE classes. And we all know this on some level, but what I think happens is that we tend to forget, ignore, deny, or minimize how important presence is while we're focusing on knowledge and we're focusing on skill, which are important also. I think at the start of our careers, maybe we might be focused on how little knowledge and skill we feel like we have and just how much more there is to learn and sort of the anxiety that can come with being a new practitioner, forgetting that there's this really profound offering that we already have in our presence if we only remember and cultivate it. And then later in our careers, I think we forget for the opposite reason. We get really excited about all the things we learn and all the things we can do, and we want to share that with clients. And I think that all that advanced learning, for the most part, benefits our clients. But again, the role of presence can get lost along the way, or we can forget just how vital it is. So really, part of what I wanted to do in having this conversation is for us to just remember on purpose together Because when we forget the role of presence, we miss the opportunity to really cultivate it, to look at what helps us offer therapeutic presence and what gets in the way of that, and sort of to do our best with that. So I'm going to try to not spill my tea all over this lectern, but I'm pretty sure it's going to happen at some point. So sorry, Mark. So I don't know, Mark, just because Mark asked me to talk about what presence is, I'm going to do it just for you. So this definition is, it started out in my brain a few years ago when I was creating my CE class that I'm teaching this afternoon. But over the months and months of teaching it, this definition has been added to and subtracted from with massage therapists. So this is where it stands in this moment. Probably by the end of the day, it will change again. So therapeutic presence as a way of being with clients that is alert, open, curious, spacious, attuned, grounded, embodied, compassionate, respectful, non-judgmental, boundaried, and attentive. And then some of the things that it isn't are the times when we're distracted, closed off, judging, self-absorbed, reactive, projecting, checked out, rushed, impatient, overly attached to our agenda, disconnected from clients or ourselves, or on autopilot.
Can you go back a slide for a minute?
I sure can. So, for the record, a quick note on the thing I just said about what not to do. If you saw yourself in that second slide, you are in good company, because the reality is we all do some of those things some of the time. And we're going to talk about that later. So the point isn't to shame anybody for not being perfect. In fact, that's very much the opposite of the point of what I want to talk about today. And that'll be abundantly clear by the end. But I do think that it's important that we have sort of a sense of what our ideal is, like what we're going for, even if we sometimes miss the mark. Like, what are we aiming for here? Can I switch the slide, whoever asked me? Yeah, okay. I'll leave this one up for a moment. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time having us think together about why therapeutic presence is so important, what the difference is between receiving a massage when that full therapeutic presence as defined is offered and what it's like when it isn't. So I'm only going to spend a few minutes on this and highlight a couple of things. There are lots and lots of reasons that these experiences are different. But what I want to do for a moment is invite you to think about this for yourselves. So first, take a moment and see if you can remember a time when you received a massage and you didn't get that presence from your therapist. And it could be for any of the reasons here. This is a lot of different stuff here. They were distracted, they were on autopilot, they were sort of pushing their agenda on you, they were like unsettled, whatever it is. So think about a time where you didn't receive therapeutic presence and what that felt like, how it affected your feeling about yourself, about the treatment, about the therapist. So just quietly think about that for a moment. What words come to mind? And then maybe we can just hear just a few words. Those of you who have a good theater voice, who don't need a microphone. Unchanged. Objectified. Distracted. Unsatisfying. Waste of time. Unimportant. Furious. Mechanical. Right. Robotic, like the robot before that. Painful. Okay. So clearly no one has had that experience, right? Okay, just wanted to check. So lots of other words could probably come up, but that's a good sort of selection. And now I want you to wipe that memory, that painful memory from your mind, and like replace it with a time when you received a massage that was just what you needed, where the person was really offering you therapeutic presence. when they were offering this to you? And same question, what did that feel like? How did that make you feel about yourself, the therapist, the experience? So I'll give you first just a quiet moment to like remember it in your mind and in your body.
Heavenly.
Heavenly. Changed. Heard, safe, grateful. Cared for. Satisfied, included. Great. Connected, life-saving. My gosh. Okay, so there's a pretty big difference there, right? So if we were to boil this way down, why presence is important, because I'm not going to go through all of the different reasons. I think it's fair to say that when we cultivate therapeutic presence, it maximizes the potential benefit for the client and it minimizes potential risk. Just pretty simply put. So I love this quote from Thich Nhat Hanh: "The most precious gift we can offer others is our presence. When mindfulness embraces those we love, they will bloom like flowers." And in case you can't tell, that flower blooming is me. So I just want to make sure. I look a little different in person, but my hair was different.
That's a very good likeness.
Yeah, I thought so. So what I love about this quote is I think it points to one of the real things that therapeutic presence offers. People say over and over again, and I've experienced this as a client, when someone is really present with me in a therapeutic way, I get to inhabit my own body. I get to really integrate. I get to sort of reclaim myself in a way and then bloom. Because so much of what we do is helping people access their own potential for healing rather than a thing we're doing to them, right? But it's easy to kind of forget about that. And so just being embodied is already kind of miraculous for a lot of clients. Just that. But then beyond that, when we can really settle into ourselves, we get to participate in the treatment in a whole different way, right? If I'm really there and I can settle in, I can engage and participate, I can say what feels good and doesn't, I can be part of that process. Okay, I'm gonna have to be careful. I have a lot to say about a lot of things, and I'm committed to getting through all my slides because I made all of them for you, so I want you to see them all. So one thing I want to highlight about the difference between presence and lack of presence that I think is particularly notable is, and this overlaps some with what Tara was talking about, is the emotional and psychological component of the experience. So what I hear from folks who I talk to about this is, on the one hand, when I receive therapeutic presence from a practitioner, and some of these were echoed in the room, some of the things I feel cared for, loved, seen. I feel like I matter as a human. Not necessarily what's on the treatment plan, right? But those are the things that we feel. We feel seen and loved and cared for. And then when therapeutic presence isn't offered, people so often say things that have a real kind of loaded quality to it. They say, I feel abandoned. I feel sad, I feel scared, I feel ashamed. I feel like there's something bad about me. And it's notable, but it's not surprising that this happens because, not only are we so vulnerable as clients, but we're wired to be very sensitive to the way people attune to us or don't attune to us. And so we have responses to that go way back to even when we were babies. Some of the ways that we respond when we're really met with presence or when we're not. Sometimes it's very subtle, and it can activate all of these really old templates that have to do with attachment early in our lives. So you don't even have to know a whole lot about that to know that it's really important to attend. So quickly, when we talk about the minimizing harm aspect of presence, when we're not offering therapeutic presence, there's a kind of a wide range of what can go wrong. It could be from this really severe end to things like boundary violations, ethical violations, clients being hurt physically, emotionally, actual harm done. That's not always the case. Sometimes the lack of therapeutic presence might lead to something in the middle that I would say is like, maybe nothing majorly bad happens, but the client feels like they can't totally settle, so they don't fully receive the treatment. Maybe they're on guard a little, but they're a little vigilant. They're kind of checking you out, like what's up. And on the low end, maybe it's just that they were a little bit unsatisfied. They didn't get exactly what they were looking for. Maybe they feel sort of a little bit like, I won't go back. I won't tell my friends. I won't write like a stellar Yelp review, but it was fine, you know.
I'll leave a big tip.
Huh?
I'll leave a big
tip, or I won't leave a tip. Yeah, depending on, that was really interesting. I don't know that I'd ever leave a big tip for someone I wasn't going back to, but now I hear something new. So here's the thing. Sometimes when we don't offer therapeutic presence, it works out. And I know that because I've heard massage therapists say to me over and over again, you know, sometimes I was just really not my best. I was kind of half there. And my client said to me, that was the most amazing massage I've ever received. You might recognize that from your own experience. Okay, cool. So on the one hand, that's super handy that happens sometimes, because if every time we weren't fully present, a disaster happened, that would be bad. So it's kind of cool that sometimes it works out, nobody notices, right? But of course, we can't rest in that. That's not like good enough to say, well, the clients won't notice anyway. First of all, because they're counting on us to pay attention. We have ethically committed to pay attention and to do our best. So there's that. And when we're not paying attention, we miss things. We might miss things. Small things, big things, small things that are big things, small things that are like openings to something really important that we might miss. Which brings me to my, so that's the but, which brings me to my first and. And even if nothing bad happens, there's this kind of like next level massage experience that's available that's more likely to be supported by therapeutic presence or invited. And that's where you have clients saying things like we heard in the room, magic, some of these we didn't hear, but life-changing, profound, magical, deeply healing, transformative, and transcendent. These are words that people use to talk about massage, but more likely if that therapeutic presence is offered. So why wouldn't we want to make that happen as much as possible? Not only for clients, but because here's the good news, for us as practitioners, because something that I hear over and over again, so it must be true, is practitioners saying, when I give a massage from a place of pure therapeutic presence, it's better for me. It feels magical, profound, connected, easeful. I feel like I'm in flow. Some of the same words that clients use, interestingly enough. And maybe most importantly, massage therapists often say, and I experience this myself as a therapist, when I give from that place, I remember why I'm doing this work. I feel aligned with my purpose. And that kind of work infuses our life with meaning and purpose. It's energizing and nourishing rather than depleting. And here's another thing. We have to stay connected to meaning and purpose in this work. We have to. If we start to notice we don't feel connected to meaning and purpose, some kind of intervention has to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to change careers. But we might need like a vacation or to not see a certain client or a break or something. Something different needs to happen. Because it's not the same for every profession. I mean, there's some jobs where you can not be connected to your meaning and purpose, go to work, say it's a paycheck, I gotta feed my kids. But when we're in the business of caring for other humans, we have to find a way to stay connected to that. And the other thing about staying connected to meaning and purpose, oh yeah, I said that already. That's that. Is that staying connected to meaning and purpose actually is one of the ways that we can prevent burnout. So I'm noticing that the colors are really different on this than on my computer at home, and it actually works for this slide because look how sickly I look. Like I'm just like so pale. I'm clearly not connected to my meaning and purpose in those pictures. So Therapeutic presence is better for us, better for our clients, so why don't we just do it all the time, right? It's that simple. Just do it all the time. Easy, everyone wins, we're connected to meaning and purpose, we all have magical, profound experiences all the time, right? Why don't we do that? Well, this is why we don't do that. The reason we don't give therapeutic presence 100% of the time to 100% of our clients is that is impossible. Why? Just off the top of my head, some reasons. Because we're human beings who have bodies and minds and lives, who exist in the world with anxiety and in-laws and street noise and difficult clients and digestive distress and sensitivities and heartbreak and sick family members and. So, I think sometimes, maybe it's just me, but I don't think it is. I think sometimes it's hard enough to get out of bed in the morning and face the world, to juggle responsibilities, to work through our own trauma, to be a sensitive person in a world where we're being bombarded with information and violence and pain all the time, to sort of do it all, to manage it all. It's hard enough to take care of ourselves and to be okay sometimes. And so then when you take the fact that just being okay has an impact on other people, that how we show up actually affects clients who we're responsible to, that's actually really tough. That's kind of stressful to think about sometimes. Like, it's hard to be okay, and we sort of have to be okay. What do we do about that? And it's not that we're constantly just clawing our way through life, but it's actually pretty common that we struggle to be present. So I think that there's this tension that creates, where therapeutic presence is vital and it's actually inherently fraught. And so I think that one of the things I love to talk about in my work and in my life are things that seem like they contradict, but really need to be held at the same time. So we hold in one hand, we need to be present with our clients, and in another, there's challenges to that. Let's look at that. Let's just have an honest conversation about that, instead of pretending that therapeutic presence isn't important, because it just is, or pretending that it's always easy. So here's what I think we do about that tension. I think that we figure out what it takes to do our best, and we normalize the struggle to do our best. And I'm going to be talking about each of these things in the next few minutes. So, how do we do our best? So the first thing I think we need to do is just to become aware. What gets in the way? What are the things for me personally that get in the way of my ability to be present with people? And what are the things that support my ability to be present? What helps me cultivate that? And then we do something about it. So we figure out what are the things I should do and what are the things I should not do, right? So to give a very concrete example of what this would be like is, if you spend some time thinking about where do you really struggle most with presence, and maybe you come up with, it's when you're hungry. That's one for me. And maybe the reason that hunger is a barrier to therapeutic presence is because you're a little spacey, so you don't track information very well. Or maybe it's because you get irritable and kind of like reactive, impatient with your clients. Maybe it's just that you physically struggle because you kind of feel weak. Whatever it is, you identify that presence. I call them presence stealers in my class. You identify that hunger is a big presence stealer for you. That's great information, because now you can be proactive. Now you can do something about it. Whether it's that you make sure you have lots of little snacks on hand that you can eat quickly between sessions, or maybe you change your schedule so you have more time between, or maybe it's just doing really good meal planning on the weekend. Whatever it is. Now, to be fair, a lot of the things that really cause us to struggle offering therapeutic presence are not simple, make a meal plan on Sunday and it's done, right? They're things that are more chronic and more sort of fraught for us, like going through a divorce, or caring for a sick family member, or just the stress of parenting. You know, those things are not like, oh, I'll just, do a quick little thing and check it off the box. Those are like ongoing struggles. But I still think that the awareness piece is important, because we can still take an honest look at what are the things that get in the way for me, and then how do I attend to that? How do I care for myself around that? And then the next part of doing our best with presence is in the moment with clients. Sometimes we're just struggling. The best thing we can do is to get better and better about noticing when we do that, and then just getting back on track as quickly as possible. Noticing and redirecting. So when we go, if you think back to the list of the sort of what therapeutic presence isn't, it's getting better and better at noticing, oh wow, I'm really judging this client right now, or I'm really feeling really reactive, or I'm thinking about, the fight I just had with my partner, whatever it is, to get better about noticing it and then returning. And then just to kind of do this throughout our lives, basically, forever. Okay? So this is the how we do our best with this thing that's hard. And we already know why we want to do our best. As we just talked about, therapeutic presence is really essential, both in what it allows for and what it prevents. But now, why is this other part so important? So I said we need to do our best and normalize the struggle. So I think that this is key. Normalizing the struggle just literally means saying, yeah, sometimes showing up as a helper and offering therapeutic presence is tough. Sometimes that's hard. And the reason that is really important is that a couple things. One is, if we can just normalize it with ourselves, then there's self-compassion available. And when we can offer ourselves self-compassion versus self-criticism, versus the narrative that says, everyone else has got it figured out, I'm the only one struggling, that one takes us down a really bad road of shame. That one takes us down a road of, I shouldn't be in this work, I'm doing harm, why is this so hard for me? So we offer ourselves self-compassion, we can already settle oh yeah, right, I'm a human and this is hard sometimes. But the other thing is that if we can normalize it with ourselves, we can normalize it as a community. We can talk to each other, we can reach out and have connection about how is this for you? And then it's not this secret thing that people are hiding and feeling shame about and not talking to anyone and not getting support. It's just brought into the light. What do we do about this? Yeah, it's hard sometimes. Let's just talk about it. So Brené Brown speaks to this. She says, self-compassion is key because when we're able to be gentle with ourselves in the midst of shame, we're more likely to reach out, connect, and experience empathy. And this is better for us, better for our clients, better for the world. So when I say that we need to do our best, I feel like we need to do our best, but this is important to me, so I'm actually going to read it. I think we need to do our best to offer therapeutic presence not in a perfectionistic, self-sacrificing, never-resting sort of way, which many of us are very good at doing, many of us meaning helping professionals, but rather in a way that recognizes that caring for ourselves is actually an integral and non-negotiable part of caring for clients. And I'm going to say that again for emphasis. We need to do our best to offer therapeutic presence, not in a self-sacrificing, perfectionistic, never-resting sort of way, but in a way that recognizes that caring for ourselves is an integral and non-negotiable part of caring for our clients. Okay. I'm going to try to leave a few minutes at the end for questions, but is it okay if I keep going, or does anyone have anything that they... So that's kind of the in general. Do our best, offer ourselves a lot of love along the way. I wanted to now talk about 2 examples of things that get in the way of therapeutic presence that are really common, but actually sometimes we don't really know they're happening or we don't recognize how they're related to presence. So I wanted to speak to what they are, why they get in the way of presence, and something you can do about it. And they kind of fall into 2 categories, thinking we know less than we do and thinking we know more than we do. Yeah? So I'm going to start here, thinking we know less than we do. This one is way more common in the people that I interact with, the people who are me and my friends and my colleagues and my clients and the people who come to my classes, right? And we might call it self-doubt, insecurity, feeling like not good enough, feeling like you have to get it right and there's always more you can do, that sort of sensation. And then another term that might resonate for some of you is imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is something that is talked about so much in my world, but I'm in a bubble, so I'm going to explain what it is for those of you who haven't heard the term. So imposter syndrome is a pervasive feeling of self-doubt, insecurity, or fraudulence, despite often overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Another way of talking about imposter syndrome is people who experience this, it's almost like they haven't internalized their achievements, or they think that everything that they've ever accomplished is sort of like a fluke, and that at any moment it's going to be taken away. Someone is going to find out that you don't actually know what you're doing. This is incredibly common. So just take a moment, and if you're like, oh, that's me, or that's sometimes me, I'm going to tell you 2 bits of good news. One is it's very common. 2 is actually more common with high achievers and people who kind of know their stuff. So I don't know if this will work, but what you can sort of do is if you notice yourself feeling imposter syndrome, you can maybe say to yourself, oh, I feel like an imposter. I must be like super smart. It doesn't really work for me, but this is my favorite. This is my all-time favorite imposter syndrome comic. Okay. So because I love this topic so much, I'm just going to do a little tiny bit more about it. So if you don't believe me, first of all, later you can Google really quickly famous, smart, successful people that have imposter syndrome. You'll find a ton of stuff written about it and like quotes. So here's just one I wanted to share. I've written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out. And this was said by none other than Maya Angelou. So that's my favorite famous person quote about imposter syndrome. Okay, so first let's talk about why this is an issue before we talk about what to do about it. Actually, one more thing. So this feeling of self-doubt or imposter syndrome, it may be like a low-level anxiety you feel all the time, or it may just come up in certain situations, but other times it's not. One time that it comes up a lot for folks is when we level up in our careers. When we step out of our comfort zone, when we do something a little new, a little edgy, then the imposter's like, what are you doing? You don't have a right to be doing that. So maybe you're fine as an employee, but then when you want to go out and start a private practice, it rears its ugly head. Or maybe when you have an opportunity to teach, that voice says, who are you to teach? You don't know anything. Or maybe it says, who are you to speak at the Oregon AMTA conference? Just for example. So, why is this an issue? This is an issue in terms of presence for a couple of reasons. One is it's just simply distracting. Like the thoughts, ruminating thoughts like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, somebody's going to find out. That kind of thinking is very distracting. It also often comes with physiological signs of anxiety. That's also very distracting. When we're feeling self-doubt, we're sort of like, ugh, right? Kind of contracted, and it actually is making me want to open up my body as I'm talking. Okay, so, but there's another reason that this is actually a barrier to presence beyond just the distraction. If you think about it, if I'm walking around feeling like someone's going to find out I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff to try to prevent them from finding out, which might look like hiding. It might look like perfectionism. It might look like trying to sound really smart, never saying I don't know because, oh my gosh, I can't say I don't know, then they'll be exposed for the fraud that I am. Or over-functioning, overly accommodating people, and all of those things get in the way of therapeutic presence. Because when we're present with a client in a therapeutic way, we have to be able to be in our seats, just solid and grounded and spacious. All that stuff crowds out our clients. There's no room for them, and we can't even see them through the fog of our own anxiety. So, a quick little strategy you can use, just checking my time. Working on pervasive self-doubt and imposter syndrome is not a quick fix, I'm sorry to say. But when it shows up in the moment with a client, what I feel like you can do is to first just bring awareness to it. So to use mindful awareness to just say, okay, there's that thing happening. So for instance, just saying to yourself something like, oh, there's that self-doubt showing up. Or there's that little rascally imposter character jumping out to be really helpful. The reason that that's helpful is because what it does is it externalizes it. Instead of being identified with the feeling of I don't know what I'm doing or ooh, it's just an experience that you're having. It's just this thing that shows up. You can say, okay, there's some self-doubt. There it is. I'm over here. And we can sort of invite it to kind of hang back a little bit in the background. It doesn't need to leave. It probably won't leave right away. But we can just say, hey friend, thank you for your concern. I'll get back to you later, but if you could just sort of be over here, have a seat, take a little nap, because I've got a job to do right now. I've got a client who's counting on me right now that I need to attend to. So it's sort of like an acknowledging it and then shifting focus. And then the work on kind of why it's coming up, that's more of longer term work that we can do, but outside of what I'm going to talk about today. But in the moment, okay. So next, I'm going to talk about the other side when we think we know more than we do. Now, first of all, if you were listening to that last section and you didn't relate at all, you're like, I never feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I always feel pretty confident about everything I say. Well, first of all, that sounds delightful. So if you want to chat with me later about what that's like to be in the world in that way, I would love to know what that's like. Yeah. But for everyone else. So anyway, the other side of the coin, though, is when we think we know more than we do. Now, the extreme version of that is arrogance and feeling like my clients don't have anything to teach me and I'm really smart. I'm guessing no one in the room is on that end, but if you are, hello, wherever you are, I'm going to talk to you as well, but I think that most of us, even if we deal with self-doubt, even if sometimes we feel like I don't know what I'm doing, we also have this presence stealer come up. And this is when we think we know more than we do. And what that looks like is things like sometimes when we're really attached to a particular modality or framework, we get really excited about our knowledge and what we have to offer. Or maybe it just looks like being really wedded to a treatment plan or reading the notes from last time and being like, I know exactly what this person's going to need and how they're going to show up. It even is just something that comes up with long-term clients where we just kind of think we know who they are and how they're going to show up. What we think we already know essentially is what we know from the past, our existing knowledge. And that's all great, but if we hold so tightly to it, we might miss what's actually there, what's actually showing up in the room. And one way to think about this is I had a mentor years ago who was talking about the benefits of having a theoretical orientation with counseling, like how it's helpful and not helpful. And she said it's great, it's important to have a theoretical orientation so you know what you're looking for, you have a map. She said, but what you want to be careful about is you want to be careful that you're not so excited about that map that you hold it in front of your face and in front of your client. and you don't actually see what's there. And this is really easy to do, to just see what we expect to see. Because when we're looking for certain information, we find it, and then the rest gets filtered out. So, when we think we know, some thoughts about what we can do here, I'm just going to go somewhat quickly through this, is we can just sort of on purpose cultivate curiosity. We sort of go, okay, I know that my brain's going to want to just look for what it already knows, so I'm going to, on purpose, take that information and try to hold it off to the side and then focus on my client. Just focus on focusing on my client and tuning in and maybe being on the lookout for what doesn't fit, for what is new and fresh and surprising. And something, that last bullet is something that I strive for. I don't always get it. But is instead of feeling like we have to cling tightly to our knowledge and our skill and like hold it like this, is if we trust that if I'm paying attention to my client, the knowledge and the skill that I have is in me, and that it will emerge right when I need it. That it's in there, and that I can like sort of let go a little bit, and then focus more on being present. Easier said than done. Okay. So, I think that another duality that I think is interesting, I feel like as helping professionals, we really have to inhabit a space of knowing and not knowing. You know, we have to really go in with curiosity and recognizing that our clients are experts and being open to what they have to say and being curious and seeing what we don't expect. But of course, we need to know something, right? Clients are going to say, if you're not an expert at all, if you have nothing to offer me, why am I paying you? There's a reason I'm paying you. But we sort of have to inhabit the space between, I think. Okay, I'm talking faster because I want to make sure I leave a couple of minutes for questions. So, so in closing, I really think that it's vital for all of us helping professionals that we just honestly confront what it means to be in a profession where the way that we show up matters. But that we do that with radical honesty and radical self-compassion. So what I mean is that we're willing to honestly look at where we're struggling with presence, not to shame ourselves or to just look at how bad we are, but just so that we may be clear. Where am I struggling so that I can take action in some way, I can do something different, and then do that different thing. And radical self-compassion, meaning that every step along the way that we are accepting of where we are. Sometimes people say to me, I don't want to offer myself self-compassion because then I'm going to get complacent. I don't want to be compassionate toward my bad habits and my faults and my flaws. And I think that that's a misunderstanding of self-compassion. Because I really feel like these two things can happen at the same time. We can say, I did the best that I could, and I want to do better next time. And I really believe that as helping professionals, we need to do both of those things. We need to continue to strive to show up for our clients as best as we can because they deserve it. And we need to also be able to say we're human. And that the reward of holding these two things and doing all of this work is that we get to do good work in the world and have a career that doesn't kill us, that supports us, that allows us to thrive. And that we get to stop when we're ready, not because we are burnt out or we've done harm to ourselves or someone else. Okay, so I don't know. I didn't leave a whole lot of time. Did I leave a little bit of time?
Maybe one or two.
One or two, if there's any comments or questions, and you may not have any, but yeah.
Just wondering about, especially in your clinical experience, your experience with when there's a battle of wills between the client and the practitioner. I see a lot of massage therapists coming into their full powers, a few years into their practice, and they encounter situations where the client will have an idea about what they need. There's some interface between the expertise of the practitioner and the expectations of the client. And sometimes there can be some locking of horns there that is a stealer of presence.
Totally. Yeah.
Can you repeat the?
Yeah, I will try. Tell me if I get it right. So speaking to what happens when there's a kind of a clash between client expectations or needs or what they think is best, like what their body needs or what they want for the treatment, and then what the practitioner thinks is best and what they need. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah, so what to do about that? Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, I think first of all, again, to be able to always offer ourselves compassion about, like, this is hard, you know, like, I think that practitioners, we have to be able to say, like, oh, this is really difficult, and to really be doing a lot of mindful awareness around that. What's coming up for me? What do I need to learn here? What do I need to let go of? You know, sort of to do a whole process around that. And I think that, I mean, this is like a really big question. I'm just going to say a couple of thoughts about it. I think that it's important that we can sort of notice if we're in kind of like a fight mode, you know, and to really like literally like relax and just start by listening. You know, what happens if I don't try to be right? What if I let go of needing to be right for just like a minute and just listen? I don't have anything to prove. What if I just like really tune in and listen deeply? Because what I think happens is when we listen really deeply, oftentimes we can find more common ground than we think. But it's in the like sort of trying to do this that each person kind of ramps up a little bit. And then if after all of that, you still feel like there's something different to say, I think being able to say, like, let me just share my thoughts about it. You know, we both want what's best for you here. We both want you to X, Y, and Z. So I wonder if I could just tell you my perspective, where I'm coming from. So it's like, instead of a battle, it's like, I'm gonna really listen to you, and then I'm gonna ask if you can hear what I have to say. That makes it sound so easy, I know, but. Thank you. Is there time for any more or no? We're good? Okay.
Break. So,
Okay. Thank you so much for your presence. Yeah.